There's a reason Scorpio always walks into a room, and somehow you feel it before they speak a single word. It's not their eyes, though they hold galaxies of unspoken stories. It's not their silence, though it's heavier than most people's screams. It's something deeper, something ancient. Scorpio doesn't just feel emotions, they become them. Love, betrayal, abandonment, rage, desire. To you, those are just words. To Scorpio, they are currents that run through the soul-carving rivers in silence that never dry up. And yet the world rarely knows what a Scorpio feels, because they don't talk. They observe, they absorb, and then they protect their pain like a sacred relic. But what if I told you that there are exactly 10 emotions Scorpio feels every day, but would never say out loud, not to their closest friend, not to their lover, not even to themselves? In this video, we're about to unlock what Scorpio keeps buried in the deepest vault of their being, not to expose them, but to finally understand them. And maybe, just maybe, to help you, dear Scorpio, realize you were never broken. You were just holding too much. So stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand something even most Scorpios don't know: why you feel so deeply and why that's not a weakness, but your rarest gift. Let's begin. Emotion No. 1, the silent anger that never leaves. They think you've let it go. They think you've moved on, but they don't understand how Scorpio truly works. When someone wrongs a Scorpio, the world expects them to explode, to shout, to break, to burn everything to the ground. But that's not what Scorpio does. No, not the evolved one. Not the one who's survived more than you'll ever know. Instead, they go quiet. That silence is not forgiveness. That silence is a choice, a sacred one. A decision to internalize the flames rather than set the room on fire. But just because Scorpio doesn't react out loud, doesn't mean they're at peace. Inside them, there's a chamber not visible to the world where unspoken anger simmers like lava beneath ancient stone. And every betrayal, every lie, every humiliation, it's carved there, stored, catalogued, not out of bitterness, out of memory, out of truth. Because Scorpio doesn't forget, they remember not to seek revenge but to remain awake, to never be blindsided again. A story you'll never hear from a Scorpio. When Caleb was 17, he overheard his best friend, the one he trusted with every secret, laughing with others about something he confided in private. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the realization, you never really valued me, you just used what I gave you. He didn't confront him, he didn't shout, he didn't cry, he just walked away and never looked back. His friend never understood why, but to Caleb, the choice was already made in silence. Years later, Caleb, a Scorpio man in his 30s, still remembers that moment, not with rage, but with a lesson burned into the core of his being. Not everyone deserves access to your vulnerability. Some only come close to know how to wound you. Why this emotion is so dangerous. The reason this anger never leaves is because Scorpio's anger is not rooted in ego, it's rooted in soul betrayal. When someone lies to a Leo, it's about pride. When someone lies to a Cancer, it's about safety. But when someone lies to a Scorpio, it's about trusting them with your shadow, and they turned it against you. That is not just painful, it's spiritual violence. And Scorpio never forgets spiritual violence. So instead of revenge, Scorpio evolves. But inside, that anger, it becomes part of their DNA. A shield, a quiet guardian that whispers, never again. The life lesson for Scorpio and for those who love them. Scorpio's silent anger is not cruelty, it's wisdom. It's the wisdom of someone who's learned not to destroy others, but to rebuild themselves with better boundaries. But here's the truth. If you are a Scorpio still holding on to that silent rage, not for vengeance, but because you've never been heard, then this is your permission. Not to speak if you're not ready, but to forgive yourself for trusting the wrong person. You're not weak because you got hurt. You're powerful. because you didn't become like them. That's the difference between a wounded soul and a Scorpio soul. A Scorpio soul turns pain into protection and silence into sacred wisdom, emotion, and the ache for deep love that never feels safe. Scorpio was born to love like a storm, all or nothing. No halfway, no guessing, no safety nets. And yet, love has never felt like home. Not because Scorpio can't love, but because the kind of love Scorpio craves is deeper than most people are ready to give. They don't want attention. They don't want surface-level romance. They want soul-merging intimacy, the kind where you don't just hold hand, you hold each other's secrets, demons, fears, and dreams without blinking. But here's the paradox. The more deeply Scorpio wants to be loved, the more terrified they become. The unspoken truth. Scorpio doesn't fear rejection. They fear being misunderstood while loving fully. Most people think Scorpio is afraid of heartbreak. That's not it. What they truly fear is this. What if I open my entire soul to you and you look at it like it's too much? That's what haunts them. Not loss, but the humiliation of exposing something sacred and watching someone mishandle it. Because Scorpio doesn't show affection lightly, when they choose you, it's after they've studied you, tested you, read your body language and your energy. If they let you in, you're already past layers of ancient gates. But what happens when the person they love only wants the fun side, only wants the sex, only wants the confidence, not the crying? Scorpio learns over time to protect their heart with firewalls. The longing stays, but the expression becomes rare. A story you'll never hear from a Scorpio. Melina was 29 when she met someone who saw through her walls. For the first time in a decade, she let herself fall. She shared her past, the trauma, the silence, the rebirths. He promised her he could handle it. 2 months later, he disappeared. No goodbye, no closure, just gone. She didn't cry in front of anyone. But that night, she sat on her apartment floor for 5 hours. No lights, no music, no distractions, just staring into the void. What hurt most wasn't the abandonment, it was this thought: maybe my love is too much. Maybe no one can hold it. Since that night, Melina has never said I love you to another soul. Why this emotion cuts so deep? Scorpio's love is devotional. It's not flirtation. It's not convenience. It's sacrifice. It's surrender. It's letting someone see your shadow and trusting they won't run. But when someone does run, or worse, pretends to stay but emotionally withdraws, Scorpio doesn't just get heartbroken. They question their entire worth. Because if their deepest offering wasn't enough, what will ever be? So they stop offering it. They love quietly, from a distance, or only in fantasy. The life lesson for Scorpio and for those who dare to love them. To the Scorpio who's stopped believing in real love, don't mistake rare with impossible. What you desire isn't too much. It's just too rare, too deep, too sacred for shallow souls. And to anyone loving a Scorpio, you cannot half love them and expect them to bloom. You must go all in or not at all. Because Scorpio doesn't crave affection, they crave spiritual fusion. And if you're not ready for that kind of fire, don't get close to the flame. Emotion number 3, the guilt of always knowing too much. There's something unnerving about a Scorpio's eyes, not because they're intense, but because they see through you. You can smile, lie, pretend, but Scorpio knows. They don't always say it, they don't always act on it, but they feel it, and that's the burden. Knowing what no one wants to admit, feeling what others deny, seeing through masks, even when you wish you couldn't. This isn't just intuition, it's emotional X-ray vision, and most people would call it a gift. But for Scorpio, it often feels like a curse. The hidden struggle no one sees. Scorpio walks through life feeling like they're holding a secret that no one gave them permission to know. They pick up on tension in a room spot lies in someone's tone, sense betrayal before it unfolds. And even when they try to ignore it, it haunts them. Because once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. But here's the emotional weight. What do you do with knowledge that breaks your heart? But you never asked for. Scorpio often carries guilt, not because they did something wrong, but because they know too much about people they still love. They know someone is cheating, but they won't say it. They know a friend is secretly envious, but they smile anyway. They know a parent never fully accepted them, but they still call home. And every time they sense something dark that no one will admit, they take it on. Internally, silently. A story you'll never hear from a Scorpio. Aaron was 35, married with 2 children, and worked in a corporate office. He had a coworker, friendly, helpful, always smiling. But Aaron, a Scorpio, felt something off from day one. The way this man stood too close. The subtle digs masked as jokes. The energy behind his eyes. For months, Aaron tried to convince himself he was overthinking, until the day he was passed up for a promotion. And that same coworker was promoted. The next week, Aaron found out the man had been quietly sabotaging his work for over a year. No one else saw it, but Aaron did from the beginning. And the worst part, he blamed himself for not trusting his gut. Why didn't I listen to what I already knew? That's the Scorpio guilt, not just for what happens, but for what they sensed long before it did. Why this emotion never goes away. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, planet of secrets, death, and rebirth. So their entire existence is tied to truth, especially the kind that others hide. But being a keeper of invisible truths is a lonely road. They don't want to be the one who always knows when something's wrong. They want peace. They want simplicity, but they're cursed with clarity. And the world rarely thanks the one who sees what others can't. So Scorpio internalizes it. They carry the knowledge like spiritual smog. It clings to them. The life lesson for Scorpio and for those who walk beside them. To the Scorpio who feels heavy from always knowing too much, you are not wrong for seeing. You are not broken for sensing, and you are not guilty for understanding what others avoid. Your awareness is not a curse, it's a compass. But remember, you are not responsible for protecting everyone from their truth. You are allowed to release what was never yours to carry. And to those close to a Scorpio, never lie to them, not because they'll punish you, but because they already know. And every lie you tell is another cut to the bond they were building with you. Emotion number 4, the craving to be vulnerable, but the fear of collapsing. Most people think Scorpio is naturally guarded, that they're cold, unbothered, emotionally armored, but that's not the truth. Scorpio isn't guarded because they want to be. They're guarded because they've learned what happens when they open up and it nearly destroys them. Scorpio craves to be vulnerable, to cry in someone's arms, to let go completely without worrying they'll be judged, misused, or left behind. But right beneath that craving is terror. Terror that if they let it all out, they'll fall apart, and no one will be there to catch them. Vulnerability isn't just hard for Scorpio, it's dangerous. You have to understand something. Scorpio doesn't kind of feel anything. When they love, it's possession. When they cry, it's collapse. When they open up, it's a full internal revolution. There's no halfway. No, I'm kind of upset. It's either they're holding the entire storm in, or they're weeping from their soul. And most people aren't equipped to hold that kind of intensity. Scorpio knows this, so they stop trying. They wear the mask, they go silent, they nod and say, "I'm fine." But inside they're screaming, "Please, just ask me again," because maybe if you asked twice, they'd tell you the truth. A story you'll never hear from a Scorpio. Jenna, a Scorpio woman in her 40s, had been the strong one all her life, the reliable one, the therapist friend, the tough mum, the lover who didn't complain. One night, she finally broke. Her chest felt tight, her breath shortened, her tears came without warning. She texted someone, the one person she thought might see through the smile. All she wrote was, "Hey, you around?" They replied, "Kinda busy. Everything okay?" And she said, "Yeah, just checking in." She never asked again. What she wanted to say was, "No, I'm drowning. I'm scared. I need someone." But she was afraid, not of judgment, but of being met with emotional emptiness again. Why this emotion runs so deep. Scorpio has been conditioned often from childhood to be the one who holds space for others. They were the child who noticed tension in the house, the teen who kept secrets to protect others, the adult who learned that being vulnerable meant being disappointed. So now, even when their heart is shattering, they retreat. They'll scream into pillows, write unsent letters, or cry in the shower. But rarely do they cry in someone's arms. Because if that person doesn't hold them fully, they won't just feel unloved, they'll feel destroyed. The life lesson for Scorpio and those who want their trust. To the Scorpio who's afraid of falling apart, your emotions are not too much. Your pain is not shameful, and your need to be held is not weakness. You were never meant to carry everything alone, but I know you've been burned before, so now, even love feels like a risk. But here's the truth. The right soul will never flinch at your breakdown. They'll kneel beside you and remind you that being real is the most powerful thing you can be. And to those who love a Scorpio, if they even hint at being vulnerable with you, don't turn away, don't downplay, don't disappear. Because that one moment could be the first time they've ever let someone truly see them. Emotion number 5, the deep jealousy that comes from feeling replaceable. Scorpio doesn't get jealous over petty things. They don't care if you talk to someone else. They don't care if you have friends. They don't even care if someone else flirts with you. What triggers their jealousy is something deeper and darker. It's the fear that no matter how deeply they love, they can still be replaced. Not because they're insecure, but because they've been replaced before, and it scarred them in ways they'll never admit. This isn't possessiveness, it's emotional terror. For most people, jealousy is about control. But for Scorpio, jealousy is a trauma response. Because when they love, they offer everything: loyalty, time, soul, energy, protection. And in their mind, love is sacred, not negotiable. But what happens when they see you laughing with someone else, or talking about another person's beauty ideas or spirit? What they feel in that moment isn't just discomfort, it's this inner voice whispering, "What if I was just temporary? What if all I gave you can be replaced overnight?" That feeling eats them alive. Because to Scorpio, being emotionally disposable is the ultimate betrayal. A story you'll never hear from a Scorpio. Tyler, a Scorpio man, had been dating someone for over a year. He gave her everything: depth, honesty, unwavering support. Then one day, during a casual dinner, she mentioned a guy from her past. Not romantically, just a memory, but the way her eyes lit up. Tyler didn't say a word. He just nodded, smiled, and changed the subject. But that night, he stayed awake in silence, replaying the tone in her voice, the way she remembered someone else with more warmth than she ever spoke of him. It wasn't rage he felt, it was sinking doubt. Maybe her soul never fully chose me. Maybe I'm just a placeholder for something she already lost. He never brought it up. He just began to pull away, quietly, completely. Why this emotion is so hard to explain. The tragedy of Scorpio's jealousy is that they don't want to own you. They want to be irreplaceable in your heart. They want to know that no one could even come close to the role they play in your life, that their love was felt at a depth only they could offer. And when you make them feel like just anyone could step into their place, they won't fight, they won't beg, they'll just shut down, or worse, vanish. Because nothing shatters a Scorpio more than realizing they gave you everything and you made it feel ordinary. The life lesson for Scorpio and those who want their loyalty. To the Scorpio who feels jealous but stays silent, you're not too much for feeling deeply. You're not toxic. You're not dramatic. You're just someone who values realness and fears being a background character in someone else's story. But here's your reminder. Your depth is rare. The right person won't make you question your place. They'll make it clear every day that no one could ever replace you. And to those who love a Scorpio, don't make them guess where they stand. Be clear, be loyal, be real. Because they're not afraid of competition. They're afraid of being emotionally invisible to someone they've already claimed in their soul. Emotion number 6. The constant feeling of emotional isolation, even when surrounded by people. Scorpio can be in a crowded room. They can be laughing at a party, texting in group chats, holding someone's hand in bed, and still feel like they're completely alone. Not because they're antisocial, not because they want to isolate, but because very few people can meet them where they truly live, emotionally, spiritually, energetically. Scorpio doesn't crave company, they crave connection. And surface-level interaction feels like spiritual starvation. A deep loneliness that has nothing to do with being alone. Scorpio often feels like an old soul trapped in a fast-moving world. A world where everyone says, "I'm fine," but no one really is. Where people love with conditions, forgive for appearances, and connect only when it's convenient. But Scorpio, they want depth. They want to talk about what haunts you at 3 a.m. They want to sit in silence and feel energy instead of filling space with noise. They want to stare into someone's eyes and feel the truth beneath the mask. But most people never go there. And so Scorpio learns to hide that hunger. They become masters of pretending, of showing up but not really being seen, of nodding in conversations but feeling completely out of place. A story you'll never hear from a Scorpio. Isla, a Scorpio woman, was known as the strong friend. She hosted dinner parties, gave relationship advice, checked in on birthdays. But one evening, while sitting with 4 friends she'd known for years, she suddenly felt like a ghost in her own life. They were talking about weekend plans. Someone cracked a joke. Everyone laughed. But Isla's mind drifted to the ache in her chest she'd been carrying for weeks, a sense of fading purpose, of wanting to cry for no reason. She looked around and realized none of them would notice if I disappeared tomorrow. That thought, it didn't come from drama. It came from emotional exhaustion, from always being present for others, but never truly felt in return. Why this emotion is so painful? Scorpio doesn't just want to be liked. They want to be understood, to be felt, to be known in the rawest, most honest sense. But this world rewards surface, loudness, performance. So they shrink, they disconnect. And the more misunderstood they feel, the more they pull back into their inner world, the only place they ever felt safe. And in that world, they carry both strength and sorrow because they know the world loves the idea of me, but very few could ever hold the real me. The life lesson for Scorpio and those who want to be their safe space. To the Scorpio who's tired of being unseen, your depth is not the problem. Your standards are not too high, and your loneliness is not your fault. You were simply born in a world that fears what it can't explain, and your heart is too ancient for shallow things. But know this, your people exist, the ones who speak in silence, who feel you in a glance, who don't just hear your words, they read your energy. And to those who love a Scorpio, if they say they're fine, don't believe it right away. Ask twice, look closer, and when they finally show you their emptiness, don't rush to fix it, just stay. Because your presence might be the one thing that makes them feel not so alone anymore. Emotion number 7, the pain of being the healer but never feeling healed. Scorpio has a strange role in the lives of others. They're the one people turn to when they're broken, when the world falls apart, when no one else understands. Scorpio listens, holds space, sees beneath the chaos, and gently says, "You're safe here. You don't have to pretend." But here's the cruel irony. Scorpio heals everyone else, but rarely feels healed themselves. They become the emotional sanctuary while their own soul quietly bleeds behind closed doors. The unspoken cost of being emotionally strong. Scorpio's strength isn't something they brag about. It's something that was forced upon them. From a young age, They were often put in emotional roles far too big for their age. The listener, the protector, the one who sensed when things were wrong even if no one else did. So they learned your feelings come second. Your pain must wait. You are the rock, never the wave. And they carried that belief into adulthood. Now friends come to them during heartbreak. Lovers cry in their arms. Strangers confide in them after 5 minutes of conversation. And Scorpio shows up fully, with wisdom, presence, and fierce loyalty. But when Scorpio breaks, the room goes quiet, because no one knows what to do when the strongest one falls. A story you'll never hear from a Scorpio. Damon was the pillar of his family. Every time there was a crisis, he handled it. When his sister's marriage collapsed, she moved in with him. When his father got sick, he rearranged his life to become a caretaker. When his best friend battled addiction, he showed up night after night until he pulled him back. But when Damon quietly slipped into depression himself, no one noticed. He stopped sleeping, stopped laughing, stopped hoping. One night, he sat on the floor of his bedroom and whispered, "Where's everyone now I saved them? Who's saving me?" But he didn't reach out, because Scorpio doesn't know how to ask for help. They've only ever known how to be the help. Why this emotion slowly destroys Scorpio. Scorpio is ruled by transformation. They absorb others' pain not to escape it, but to alchemize it. They transmute heartbreak into wisdom, fear into strength, abandonment into self-worth. But that power has a cost, because you can only carry so many people before your own knees begin to shake. And if no one notices, you fall silently, completely. The healer becomes the forgotten patient, the rescuer becomes the one drowning, and no one sees it until it's too late. The life lesson for Scorpio and the ones who lean on them. To the Scorpio who's tired of always being strong, you don't have to carry everyone. You're not selfish for needing rest. You're not broken for wanting someone to hold you for once. You deserve the same depth you give. You deserve the same healing you offer. You deserve to collapse safely in the arms of someone who says, "I've got you now." And to those who are loved by a Scorpio, stop assuming they're okay just because they're calm. Stop relying on their strength without checking on their soul. Sometimes the strongest ones are the ones closest to the edge. And sometimes the best gift you can give a Scorpio is to finally ask, "How are you really?" and then stay long enough to hear the truth. Emotion, number 8. The rage at injustice that burns in silence. Scorpio is not loud when the world gets cruel. They don't cause a scene. They don't post long rants or demand attention. But inside, a wildfire burns. Not because Scorpio wants revenge, not because they need to be right, but because their soul is built on truth, loyalty, and cosmic justice. And when they witness lies being rewarded, manipulators being praised, or good souls being silenced, something shifts inside them, something ancient, something furious. This isn't just personal, it's spiritual. Scorpio doesn't just hate injustice when it's aimed at them. In fact, they often stay quiet when they're the one being hurt. But when someone they love is betrayed, when a child is abused, when power is abused and no one stands up, Scorpio becomes the storm, quietly, relentlessly, like a shadow at the edge of the fire waiting to act. They may not say much, but they're watching, calculating, remembering, and their silence. It isn't peace. It's the gathering of power. A story you'll never hear from a Scorpio. Nico, a Scorpio, worked in a corporate office where he watched a coworker slowly sabotage another someone, kind, gentle, and far too trusting. No one else noticed or cared. But Nico did. He gathered evidence quietly, watched every detail, never confronted directly, until one day when the timing was right, he exposed the truth, not for applause, but for justice. The bully was fired, the victim stayed silent, and Nico never told anyone what he had done behind the scenes. He just walked out of the building that day with peace in his chest, because for Scorpio, knowing they restored balance is reward enough. Why this emotion is so powerful and so isolating. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, the underworld transformation and the collapse of false power. So when something violates their moral code, it's not just a disagreement, it's a soul violation. They carry the weight of injustice personally, even if it didn't happen to them. But here's the pain. They often fight silent wars, battles no one knows are happening. And when justice is restored, no one claps. Because no one even knew there was a war. This emotional burden turns Scorpio into a lone warrior, always scanning, always protecting, always burning. And yet, never asking for thanks. The life lesson for Scorpio and those who cross them. To the Scorpio who rages at injustice but feels unheard, your fury is not dangerous, it's divine. You were built to burn away what's false, to be the unseen hand that restores balance, to fight not with noise, but with unshakable integrity. But also know this, you don't have to fix the entire world alone. Sometimes justice comes through silence, sometimes through action, and sometimes through simply walking away from what insults your soul. And to those who dare betray a Scorpio or someone they love, understand this clearly. They may not raise their voice, but they'll never forget. And when the time comes, they'll show you just how powerful quiet justice can be. Emotion number 9, the desire to trust again. But the walls keep rising. Scorpio wants to trust. They want to believe. They want to walk into a new relationship, a new friendship, a new beginning, without suspicion, without fear, without armor. But every time they try to lower their guard, they feel the past creeping in, the betrayal, the lies, the moment someone swore they were different and proved they weren't. So even though Scorpio craves connection, they find themselves building walls faster than anyone can climb them. Trust isn't natural to Scorpio, it's earned through fire. For Scorpio, trust isn't a default setting, it's a sacred contract. It's whispered, not shouted, earned, not demanded. They don't trust because you say they should. They trust because your energy, actions, and consistency make it impossible not to. And here's what most people don't understand. Scorpio doesn't fear betrayal because they're fragile. They fear betrayal because when they love, they go all in. And the fall from that height is devastating. So instead of risking that fall again, they quietly pull back, smile politely, keep you at arm's length, even if their soul is screaming to let you in. A story you'll never hear from a Scorpio. Ava, a Scorpio woman, had been single for 3 years, not because she couldn't find someone, but because she couldn't risk herself again. Then she met someone who seemed safe, gentle, honest, patient. He did everything right, called when he said he would, listened, respected her pace. And just when Ava started to let her walls drop, she found out he had been dating someone else the entire time. She didn't cry in front of anyone, didn't call him, didn't block him. She just went quiet. Internally, she made a new promise. Next time I won't even open the door. That's how the walls rise. Not out of spite, but out of survival. Why this emotion hurts so deeply. Scorpio knows how to love, not lightly, but with intensity that transforms the soul. But every time they've opened that sacred part of themselves to someone undeserving, they've paid the price. And it's not just the heartbreak, it's the self-betrayal of ignoring their intuition, of seeing the red flags but hoping anyway. So now they don't hope as easily, they don't trust as fast, they hold themselves close and the world at a distance, even when they're desperate to be held. The life lesson for Scorpio and those who want in. To the Scorpio who wants to trust again but can't seem to lower the walls. You're not cold, you're not broken, you're protecting something sacred, but not everyone is the past. There will be those who come not to invade, but to sit patiently outside your gate until you are ready to let them in. And to those who want Scorpio's trust, be consistent, be truthful, be patient. Because once Scorpio trusts, you really trusts you, they don't just let you in. They give you the keys to a kingdom no one else has ever seen. Emotion number 10. the grief of letting go without closure. Scorpio doesn't always get to say goodbye. Sometimes the connection ends without warning. Sometimes the silence speaks louder than betrayal. And sometimes the person they love the most just walks away without a word, without an answer, without a reason. And Scorpio, they don't beg, they don't chase, they don't write long letters asking why. They just close the door, silently. But the grief never truly leaves. This is not just loss, it's emotional haunting. Scorpio is a fixed water sign. Once they emotionally attach, it's deep committed and full-bodied. So when something ends without clarity, without truth, without emotional closure, it doesn't just confuse them, it unsettles them. It violates the code they live by. If we shared something real, then it deserves an honest ending. But so often, Scorpio doesn't get that ending. They get silence, cowardice, evasion. And instead of lashing out, they internalize the wound, letting it echo in their inner world. Sometimes for years. A story you'll never hear from a Scorpio. Marcus, a Scorpio, fell in love once. The kind of love that makes you plan futures, not just weekends. They talked about children, spiritual paths, shared childhood trauma. Then one day, without warning, she ghosted. No argument, no explanation, just gone. He waited, texted once, no reply. And that was it. No funeral, no fire, just the collapse of something sacred, in silence. Years later, he still dreams about her, still imagines what he'd say if he could hear the truth. But he never did, and so he became someone who loves more quietly now, not because he loves less, but because he fears that grief again. Why this emotion never truly heals. Most people can move on with time. Scorpio doesn't. Not because they're obsessive, but because when they love, they embed memories deep into their spirit. They remember scents, moods, the way you said their name when no one else was listening. So when that love ends without closure, it's like a book missing its final chapter. And Scorpio, the sign of death and rebirth, hates loose endings. They may smile, date again, rebuild, but part of their heart remains open to a goodbye they'll never get. The life lesson for Scorpio, and for those who leave them behind. To the Scorpio still haunted by unanswered endings, you deserved better. You deserved a full goodbye. You deserved the honesty you always give others. But closure is not always given. Sometimes it must be claimed. And your healing doesn't require their truth. It requires your release. You don't need the ending they never gave you. You only need to remember that what you offered was real, that you showed up with soul, and that your story doesn't end with their silence. And to those who walk away from a Scorpio, don't mistake their silence for apathy. They're not over it. They're just too proud to show you the ashes. Conclusion: the sacred weight Scorpio carries in silence. If you've made it to the end of this video, you already know what most people never will. That Scorpio is not mysterious because they want to hide. Scorpio is mysterious because the world has never felt safe enough for them to fully reveal. Behind their silence are oceans of emotion. Behind their strength is the memory of all the times they had to be strong for others. And behind their loyalty is a soul that has already been broken and rebuilt many times over. The truth is, Scorpio's emotions aren't a weakness. They are a sacred map, a guide through darkness, through transformation, through rebirth. Scorpio feels deeper because they were meant to feel deeper. They see more because they were chosen to see what others ignore. They hurt quietly because their healing doesn't happen on the surface. It happens in the shadows, in the quiet, in the space between what is said and what is truly meant. So if you are a Scorpio, this is your reminder. You are not broken for feeling things no one else talks about. You are not weak for needing silence. You are not too much for craving a love that reaches your soul. You are exactly who you were born to be. And the world may never understand the weight you carry. But that doesn't mean your feelings aren't valid. It means they're rare. And rare things aren't meant to be explained, they're meant to be honored. And if you love a Scorpio, remember this: they don't need you to fix them. They don't even need you to fully understand them. They just need one thing for you to see them, feel them, stay. Not when it's easy, but especially when it's not. Because when a Scorpio lets you in, you're not just entering their heart, you're entering a temple. Treat it with the reverence it deserves. The path forward. As we close this video, here's the final truth. Scorpio's silence is not the absence of emotion. It is the container of the sacred. It holds grief. It holds love. It holds the wisdom of lifetimes. So the next time you meet a Scorpio and they don't say much, listen anyway. Because in their stillness, you might just hear the language of the soul. If you felt seen in this video, if a part of your soul whispered, "This is me," drop a comment. Let it out, even just one sentence. This space is for you, and don't forget to subscribe to the Path to Buddha Wisdom, because here you are never too deep, you are never too silent, you are never too much. You are home.